Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeb Nix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Sathish Thirmoorthy of UCBOS. Those of you who watch the channel regularly will remember I spoke with Sathish not too long ago, actually, but we're at our North American Food Manufacturing Summit today. We're having a conversation about putting technology in perspective, some of the business fundamentals that technology can enable. And actually, I like the idea of, in a time of change, you still need order. You can't throw everything away and start over. Manufacturing processes work for a certain reason. And even in a time of change, there needs to be maintaining what works and what has to work. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Sathish, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to connect with you again, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
I wonder if we can start off by talking about some business fundamentals. Because I think if you launch into a conversation about technology, we can lose the forest for the trees. In a manufacturing environment, there are some things that have to work in a certain way. And I know just before we started recording, you were specifically mentioning one idea of thinking about this is the SCORE model. Maybe you could tell us about that.
Yeah, it is important that we lay some emphasis on preserving order amid change, and at the same time, preserving change amid order. Because we never know what's going to come in the future in terms of driving change, because that's going to be constant. From that standpoint, it is important that we also talk about fundamentals. So that's when SCORE model comes into play. SCORE, as all of us know, it is the supply chain operations reference model. Adopting that model, industries can improve their supply chain efficiency. So that model starts with plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. So enable also is a critical part of the overall framework. So from that standpoint, going back to basics, looking at what the SCORE model is, how can you really put a structure around that and also look at what enables the supply chain efficiency. From that standpoint, you should be in a position to take things forward.
When I think of business fundamentals, I try to come at it from the decision-making process. And, what product are you going to make? When are you going to make it? How much of it are you going to make? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces in that, and I know manufacturing is important, but we also want to put it in its context. So maybe you can walk us through that.
Sure. Everything starts at the top of the pyramid, right? Talk about business plan, that sort of dovetails into the sales and operations plan. Then comes your marketing and production plan. So that production plan is sort of broken down into multiple aspects. One, you start with the master production schedule, then you get into the material requirements planning and look at the overall execution on the shop floor itself. Either you make or buy or do both of them. So that's where production comes into picture. And beneath that, you have the execution of the finished goods itself. You store inventory, you transport and ship to your customers, and then the rest of the processes in terms of there's a return and how do you manage customer experience, so on and so forth.
I wonder if we can talk about the role of manufacturing in all of this, because obviously it can't operate by itself. It's got a lot of inputs and outputs and throughputs.
Yeah.
How does it fit into that larger constellation?
Now, manufacturing, as you rightly said, cannot act in isolation. It has to look up, it has to look down, it has to look around as well. Now, it's not about creating the work order to execute the process on the floor and be done with that. There's a lot happening on the shop floor. That's when the entire process imperatives comes into discussion. If you look at what is expected when running a process on the shop floor, manufacturing a particular product or set of products, is to have that agility on the shop floor, the ways and means to improve productivity, and also having customer reliability in terms of fulfilling the orders. What can enable that is the production floor. And the production floor has to work in tandem with what the marketing plan is, how much is that I'm going to store, how much is that I'm going to manufacture, what sort of enablement I'm going to bring in. So that's important as well. So I cannot run a process as I was running, 20 years ago. Forget about 20 years. I can't even, imagine running a process without any improvement that I was running 5 years ago. So that's where bringing in the right enablers becomes very important. And technology is one such enabler.
I was just going to say, I feel like this is where we actually have put technology in its proper perspective, because having established the framework of the business, how is technology driving change, but how is it also maintaining the order of what is working and cannot be interrupted?
Technology Of course, manufacturers use, one is on the operation side, and there is an information technology side. On the operation side, there is a need to bring in a lot of manufacturing execution systems and also align with the Industry 4.0 theme in terms of digitalizing the entire manufacturing processes, be it IoT or blockchain or big data. So all these imperatives from a technology standpoint have been defined and baked into the process imperative itself so that the manufacturers can look at the right technology components, which will enable all these. And on top of that, there is also the supply chain aspect in terms of, one, I can improve my productivity with all these imperatives that I just spoke about, but how can I also improve my supply chain efficiency end to end? So that's where an additional layer of looking at the right technology is important.
Now, when I try to imagine an existing manufacturer, I mean, no one is starting from a blank piece of paper here. As we said, there's a system in place that works, and they have built up different capabilities at different times to solve different challenges. But to advance the business, they need to start talking to each other. The quality space and the ERP space and the inventory management and the warehouse management, at some level, we need to start having those different systems talking to each other in one language. And I think that's where we're probably going to go in this conversation when we talk about the next generation of technology as an enabler. Will you speak to that?
Yeah. So before I talk about that particular aspect, I just want to bring in what the analyst community is also recommending in terms of managing a set of applications in an IT ecosystem within a manufacturing vertical, looking at consolidation of technologies to deliver business value. What that means is, of course, it is left to the choice of the strategy makers in terms of what the IT strategy should be, how large is the organization, has any merger and acquisition happened in the recent past, how that integration is progressing. So all these will define a particular IT strategy. But whatever the strategy is, the need of the hour is to have an overarching platform that's going to enable the solutions that they will need, enable the connectivity that they will need, enable the agility, resiliency, and also the reliability of the supply chain itself. So from that standpoint, the groundbreaking technology that we are talking about today is a zero-code technology.
Actually, could I pause you for 1 second? Because when I think of zero code, and you and I have had some conversations about this in the past, the thing that stands out to me is usability. And I would love for you to expand upon that piece a little, please.
Absolutely. I mentioned about scale and speed. The other important aspect is at ease. So build solutions out at ease. This is the other important dimension about zero code. Now, what that means is, of course, zero code means that you don't need to write any code, and that takes sense into managing things without deploying that code, and there is no need to maintain that code. So that is the the ease factor that I'm talking about from a zero code standpoint. Looking from the perspective of the manufacturing business in itself, why zero code? So we spoke about the need to have an overarching platform. And we spoke about the scenarios that will define the need for having a particular technology coming into an existing ecosystem. So that's where the strategy folks need to enable a situation where they are picking a right technology, not for now, but for years to come. Because what we have seen in the recent past in terms of disruptions becoming a new normal, there is a need to identify the right technology to enable any business, in this case, if we're talking about manufacturing, to really manage their operations and at the same time enable efficiency within its own domain so that it caters to the overall efficiency of the entire supply chain.
So in that context, then, I understand UCBOS has a platform, actually several different options of platform that can unite different ecosystems of data that you can put questions to and get real answers out of. Can we talk a little bit about that? And if you need to use a specific industry as an example, I'd love it for it to be food manufacturing, because we are at our food manufacturing event.
Yep. So from a data standpoint, the platform functions as a data convergence platform. not only convergence and visualization, it also goes to the extent of orchestrating business processes around that data. So that's the capability of one of the offerings that we have within the platform, what we call as iPaaS, which is Integration Platform as a Service, which also has an orchestration capability. Now, we have spoken to a lot of food manufacturers in the conference. So what is coming out is, of course, they have been projected the need to have supply chain functions enabled with technology. Of course, there are slivers of tech component within their ecosystem catering to certain set of business functions. But today, they are realizing a need to extend technology footprint to enable them achieve a lot of different business functions within the supply chain. So we have seen people talking about doing production scheduling. While they only have a fundamental system catering to the ERP function, they're looking at solutions for production scheduling. So they have gone much ahead of the overall supply chain process. Even before looking at demand forecasting, they have started with production scheduling because they had a lot of challenges. Now, what this means is if you take in a typical product, it has to be very structured. It is not going to be on demand or providing you with ad hoc solutions. That's where solutions like UCBOS, being an overarching platform, you can quickly invoke what is that you need to build out a production scheduling function before you even look at demand forecast.
It gives users the flexibility to focus on what their priority is in the house.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So because food manufacturing, as I said, based on what we have gathered with the discussion that we had across the spectrum of personas, is that they're not tech ready, given the demand that they have within the food manufacturing ecosystem, because there are a lot of process-related imperatives that we touched upon during the initial part of the conversation.
So I love that idea that it is something even I will say overworked food manufacturer. I mean, they're all doing a difficult job. They don't want to bring in a big IT team to implement something, and maybe they don't have the time or the resources or the know-how to get that up to scale. And that's not what a no-code solution does. It's something that they can very much do in-house with their own team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For people who have been listening to this and want to learn or ask a few questions that are relevant to their own business challenges, what is the best way to get in touch?
The best way I would suggest is to visit our website, which is ucbos.com. So that is quite a bit of literature, quite a bit of success stories, and also how the platform is positioned to cater to the needs of various industry verticals. In this case, food manufacturing, quite a few success stories and information that they could take in and also have that as part of their IT strategy and come out with an outcome that would go towards groundbreaking technology like zero-code tech.
Absolutely. Well, I encourage everyone to visit that website. I've had the pleasure of speaking with the UCBOS team a number of times, even from years ago. And at the time, it was so far ahead of what other people were doing. I was having a tough time wrapping my head around it. And now we really are seeing the rest of the industry almost catch up with what you guys have been offering. That's so exciting to be able to bring these different systems together. Sathish, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Jeff. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint Podcast Series. I've been Jeff Mix. Let's do it again soon.